My wife, Holly Atkinson, and I spent last weekend in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Beginning in my mid-teens, I lived in Lancaster County, where I graduated from Lancaster Mennonite High School and eventually went to college at Franklin and Marshall. For several years, I lived with my aunt and uncle among the Amish and Mennonite farms east of Lancaster, where my uncle served as pastor of a small Mennonite church. I was its youth minister for several years, and then served as acting pastor for a short time. Last Sunday, I preached at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Lancaster, and then presented a public lecture titled, "From Mennonite to Manhattan." My quest for freedom and belonging. In case you're interested, I'll link to the lecture in today's sermon on the website. During the question and answer time after the lecture, a woman asked me an exceedingly perceptive question. She noted that I had gladly taken some parts of the Mennonite tradition with me to Manhattan, including a deep sense of what being a religious community requires of us, both as individuals and as a group. But, she said, the lessons of childhood die hard. She asked, "What parts of the tradition did you take along inside of you that you wish you hadn't? What's been the hardest to leave behind?" I didn't answer her adequately at the time, but I should have said, the eclipse of emotion. I should have told her about the radio. I should have told her how long it took for me to admit that I felt lonely, and I didn't believe the truth I had been told. The Mennonites of my upbringing lived their lives from the outside in. Whenever you wanted to know what to think or do, or even what you should feel, you looked to someone else or something else to make the call. God, the Bible, your pastor, your parents. In other words, it's not your life. You can't do what you want. The problem with popular music on these terms is that it has the power to break through layers of oughts and shoulds to reach a different source of truth. Worst case scenario, popular music can lead to dancing. And as Springsteen points out in his South by Southwest keynote, you only have to watch Elvis dance to know where that will lead. Igor Stravinsky's revolutionary ballet, The Rite of Spring, contains the same explosive energy. Musically groundbreaking and politically prescient, the ballet premiered in Paris in May of 1913, just a year before the start of World War I. The ballet begins with a bucolic springtime ritual, the adoration of the earth. The music, however, is anything but bucolic. As Leonard Bernstein once said, "The Rite of Spring has got the best dissonances anyone ever thought up, and the best asymmetries and polytonalities and polyrhythms and whatever else you care to name." The ballet also subverted the idea that Parisian ballet was the epitome of civilization. As the ballet continues, the pastoral adoration of the earth descends into primitive violence of human sacrifice. From civilization to savagery in 30 minutes flat. a path Europe would tragically follow in the 5 years following. Scandalously, but not surprisingly in retrospect, the premiere of the Rite of Spring ended in a full-scale riot. Sometimes music reveals to us the deep truth that we don't want to know, even if we must. The arrival of spring reminds us to pay attention to life from the inside out. There's nothing more wizened than a daffodil bulb in winter, or more dazzling than its flower in springtime. The opposite can also be the case, of course. Sometimes when we discover the truth within, we're forced to make hard choices. Sometimes we gotta get out of whatever place we're in and find a better life. In either case, the rite of spring is an opening up, a peeling back of the hard husk. Sometimes we like what we find, and sometimes we don't. But the truth about who we really are, either for better or for worse, lies within. To answer the woman in Lancaster who asked me the question, my Mennonite upbringing did not equip me to peel the husk and discover the life within. We didn't acknowledge emotions, either our own or those of others. Emotions were pink elephants in the room, or perhaps yellow submarines. Whatever their shape and hue, we weren't supposed to see them. In this sense, my guess is that all of us are partly Mennonite. All of us carry wounds from childhood, inflicted either by ignorance or intent, that make it hard for us when we become adults. And we live in a bling culture that values material things and superficial appearances rather than character, emotional depth, and telling the truth. Yes, I would say to the woman in Lancaster, the lessons of our childhoods linger. It's easy for us to disguise our feelings with a veneer of thought. It's easy for us to ignore our feelings or the feelings of others by deploying our defenses of reason and logic. Even so, the lessons of childhood can be relearned. For my part, I've had to learn the music of the heart in other ways. I listened to Johnny Cash and Bruce Springsteen and the Black Eyed Peas, and I still do. I listened to Schubert, Chopin, and Stravinsky, and I still do. I also read lots of poetry, Euripides, Emily Dickinson, and Wisława Szymborska. My best teachers have been other people, especially those of you who have shared your sorrows and struggles with me. Also my colleagues, mentors, close friends, and especially my wife Holly, whose heartstrings have been better tuned to the music of deep emotion. These days, I may not always get the color of the elephant right, but at least I know it's in the room. In a culture that ceaselessly urges us to be superficial, we need to develop disciplines of depth. Our common meditation for all souls is one such discipline. Our gathering each week for worship is another. In these ways, we listen for what we most deeply feel and connect with what we most deeply love. Once we have learned to listen to our own longings and aspirations, we can listen to those of others. Ultimately, we will sense our deep connection to everything, to all that is past and all that is possible, and thus to the God who holds us all in a divine embrace. This experience of listening to our hearts becomes most finely attuned during prayer, which is not a time to ask for concessions from some cosmic vending machine. Rather, it's a time to ponder our deepest longings and highest aspirations. In prayer, we ask, what pain or sorrow most deeply sears your soul today? What hunger or longing most vividly animates your thoughts? Until we know these things about ourselves, we'll be hijacked by impulses we don't understand and harnessed to purposes we don't comprehend. The good news for all of us is that spring has come. It's a time for opening up, shaking loose, setting free. As another New Jersey rocker, John Bon Jovi, urges us to sing in his version of the Animals anthem, "It's my life, it's now or never." Amen. I love you. May God bless us all.